The fluorescent lights in the emergency room cast harsh shadows across my scrubs as I stumbled through the automatic doors at 3:47 a.m. My hands were still shaking from the adrenaline of the last call, a motorcycle accident that had required every ounce of skill I'd learned in my 2 years as a paramedic. The rider was stable now, but barely. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. "Martinez, you look like hell," called out Jenny Thompson, one of the night shift nurses who'd become something like a friend over the countless late-night coffee runs. "Feel worse than I look," I managed, pulling off my latex gloves and tossing them into the biohazard bin. The familiar routine of decontamination had become as automatic as breathing, but tonight everything felt heavier somehow. My phone buzzed against my hip. A text from my roommate Kyle. "Your dad called the apartment again? Third time this week. Says you're not answering his calls." I stared at the screen, my jaw clenching involuntarily. Richard Martinez, successful real estate developer, pillar of the Phoenix community, and the man who'd made it crystal clear that his son was nothing more than a disappointment wrapped in a uniform that, in his words, any high school dropout could wear. "Problem?" Jenny asked, noticing my expression. "Just family drama," I said, shoving the phone back into my pocket. "You know how it is?" But she didn't know how it was. Jenny came from one of those families you see in Christmas movies, supportive. Parents who'd driven 6 hours to attend her nursing school graduation, who called just to check in, who bragged about their daughter to anyone who'd listen. She couldn't understand what it felt like to have a father who introduced you to his business associates as "my son, who's still figuring things out." Even though you were 26 years old and saving lives for a living, the night dragged on, with its usual parade of emergencies. An elderly woman having chest pains, false alarm, just anxiety. A construction worker who'd sliced his hand open with a circular saw, 12 stitches, and a lecture about safety protocols. Or a teenager who'd overdosed at a house party, touch and go for about 20 minutes before we got him stable. Each call was a puzzle, a life-or-death decision tree that required split-second judgment and flawless execution. In the back of the ambulance, I wasn't Richard Martinez's disappointing son. I was Alex Martinez, paramedic, and people depended on me to know exactly what to do. When everything went wrong, but those moments of clarity and purpose seemed to evaporate the second I clocked out by 7 a.m.
Oh.
I was sitting in Mel's diner on Highland Avenue, staring at a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. The breakfast crowd was starting to filter in, construction workers grabbing quick meals before their shifts, office workers who'd stopped for better coffee than whatever their workplaces provided, families with young kids who were somehow already wide awake and energetic. I envied them all. They looked like people who belonged somewhere, who had clear purposes and supportive families and fathers who didn't spend every conversation cataloging their failures. "You gonna order something, or are you planning to rent that booth for the day?" The waitress, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, stood next to my table with a coffee pot. "Sorry, Linda, just thinking." She'd been working at Mel's for as long as I'd been coming here, which was pretty much since I'd started working nights. Linda had that gift that some people have. She could read customers like open books, knew when someone needed to talk, and when they needed to be left alone. "Rough night?" she asked, refilling my cup without being asked. "Rough life," I said, then immediately regretted it. Linda didn't need to hear my problems, but instead of walking away, she slid into the booth. Across from me, "You know, I've been watching you come in here for 2 years now? Always in that uniform, always looking like you've been through a war, but you've got something most people don't. Yeah, it's that, you care. You can see it in your eyes. Whatever you do out there, it matters to you. Not everyone can say that about their job." Before I could respond, my phone rang. The caller ID made my stomach drop. "Dad." I let it go to voicemail, but Linda had already noticed my change in expression. "Family?" she asked. "My father. We don't see eye to eye on much." "His problem with you?" It was such a direct question that I found myself answering honestly. "He thinks I'm wasting my life. Says I could have been a doctor or a lawyer or taken over his business. Instead, I'm just a paramedic who will never make real money or have real respect. Linda was quiet for a moment, then she leaned forward. Can I tell you something? My brother. Tommy was a paramedic for 30 years, retired last month. Do you know what he told me at his retirement party? Said he'd saved over 200 lives in his career. 200 people who went home to their families because of him. How many real estate deals do you think your dad closed that can say the same thing? I wanted to believe her, but the weight of my father's disappointment was a constant presence in my chest. Like a stone I'd swallowed that I would never digest, my phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. Against my better judgment, I played. Alex, it's your father. I know you're avoiding my calls, but we need to talk. I've been patient, but this nonsense has gone on long enough. You're 26 years old, and you're still playing ambulance driver. I have contacts at the university. You could still get into medical school, or law school, or come work for me and learn the business. But this, whatever you're doing. Now, it's not a career, it's a phase. And frankly, I'm embarrassed to tell people what my son does for work. Call me back. Linda watched my face as I listened, and when I set the phone down, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Don't let anyone, even family, make you feel small for helping people. What you do matters, Alex, even if they can't see it. As I walked out of the diner and drove home to my cramped apartment in Tempe, all I could hear was my father's voice. I'm embarrassed to tell people what my son does for work. The words followed me into my restless sleep, and they'd still be there when I woke up for my next shift, because no matter how many lives I saved, no matter how many people I helped, I couldn't escape the feeling that maybe my father was right. Maybe I really hadn't amounted to anything at all. The sun was climbing higher over Phoenix. Somewhere in the city, someone would need help today. Someone would need me to show up and know what to do and make the difference between life and death. I just wished that it counted for something in my father's eyes. 3 weeks passed before, finally worked up the courage to return my father's calls. Or maybe it was cowardice that finally drove me to his office on Camelback Road. Either way, I found myself sitting in the marble-clad lobby of Martinez Development Group at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, waiting for the man who'd built an empire out of strip malls and housing developments. The receptionist, a polished woman named Clarissa, who'd probably never missed a manicure appointment in her life, kept glancing at me like I was a stain on her pristine environment. My paramedic uniform had been replaced by khakis and a button-down shirt, but I still felt out of place among the Italian leather furniture and abstract art that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. Mr. Martinez will see you now, Clarissa announced, her voice carrying just enough disdain to let me know where I ranked in her estimation. Richard. Martinez's corner office was a monument to success, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Phoenix skyline, walls lined with awards and photos of him shaking hands with mayors, governors, and businessmen whose names appeared regularly in the Arizona Republic's business section. Behind his mahogany desk, my father looked every inch the successful executive. In his tailored suit and silk tie, he looked tired, were his first words to me. Not, hello, not good to see you. Just an observation delivered with the same tone he might use to comment on a disappointing quarterly report. I work nights, Dad, right? The ambulance thing. Gestured to the chair across from his desk like he was granting me an audience. We need to discuss your future, Alex. I've been more than patient, but this experiment has run its course. Word experiment hit me like a physical blow. 2 years of training, certifications, life and death decisions, reduced to a failed science project. It's not an experiment, it's my career. Richard opened a folder on his desk and slid a photograph. Across the mahogany surface, it was from last month's Chamber of Commerce dinner, him in a tuxedo, standing with other business leaders, all of them successful men with successful children. Do you know what Robert Chen told me at this dinner? His son just became a partner at Morrison and Associates, youngest partner in the firm's history. Then there's Bill Patterson. His daughter just got accepted to Johns Hopkins Medical School. Full scholarship. My father paused, letting the comparison sink in before continuing. And when they asked about you, did you know what I had to say? That my son drives an ambulance. Not that he's a medical professional, not that he's working towards something greater, just that he drives an ambulance. I don't just drive, Dad. I save lives. Last month alone, you make $38,000 a year, he interrupted, pulling out another document. I know because I had my accountant run the numbers. Do you know what that puts you at? Bottom 15% for college graduates. Your age. You're 26 years old, Alex, and you're earning less than some high school kids make working retail. The numbers stung because they were true. I'd never been motivated by money. Sitting in that office surrounded by evidence of my father's wealth, the gap felt insurmountable. Money isn't everything. Money is freedom. Money is respect. Money is the difference between being someone people look up to and being someone they pity. Richard stood up and walked to his window, looking out at the city he'd helped shape. I built this company from nothing. Started with a single property when I was younger than you are now. Worked 18-hour days, took risks, made sacrifices. And for what? So my son could throw away every opportunity I've given him? What opportunities? You mean the ones that come with strings attached? The ones where I have to become exactly what do you want me to be? He turned from the window, and for a moment I saw something flicker across his face. Hurt, maybe, or disappointment so deep it had calcified into resignation. I'm offering you a choice, Alex. One last chance to make something of yourself. There's a position opening up in our commercial development division. Entry level, but with real growth potential. It's $45,000 to start, full benefits, and a clear path to management. The offer hung in the air between us. Part of me, the part that was tired of living paycheck to paycheck, tired of the judgmental looks, tired of feeling like a disappointment, wanted to take it. What about my current job? What about it? You give 2 weeks' notice and move on? People do it every day. And the people I help? The lives I save? Richard's expression hardened. Someone else will do that job, Alex. Someone without your education, without your potential. But no one else can be my son. No one else can carry on what I've built. Weight of expectation pressed down on me like a physical force. This was the moment I'd been avoiding for 2 years, choosing between my father's approval and my own path. I need time to think about it. How much time? I don't know. A few weeks, maybe? Richard returned to his desk and made a note in his calendar. I'll give you until the end of the month. After that, the offer comes off the table and we'll need to have a different conversation about your role in this family. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Choose his path or risk losing him altogether. I left his office feeling more conflicted than ever. The elevator ride down felt interminable, each floor marking another step away from the life my father had mapped out for me and back toward the uncertainty of my own choices. In the parking garage, I sat in my beat-up Honda Civic, a stark contrast to the BMWs and Mercedes surrounding it, and called Kyle. How'd it go? He asked. He offered me a job. It's good, right? I don't know, maybe. He basically gave me an ultimatum. Take the job or lose my family. Kyle was quiet for a moment. We'd been roommates since college, and he knew the complicated history between my father and me better than anyone. Do you want to do? It was such a simple question, but I realized I didn't have a simple answer. What I wanted was my father's respect and approval, but not at the cost of abandoning everything I'd worked for. I want to matter, I said finally. Not what I do to count for something. It already does, man. You just need to figure out if it counts enough. I drove home through Phoenix traffic. My father's words echoed in my mind. No one else can. Be my son. But increasingly, I wondered if being his son meant losing myself entirely. The choice was mine to make. But the consequences would ripple through every relationship that mattered to me. And I had less than 3 weeks to decide which version of my future I could live with. The call came in at 11:43 p.m. on a Thursday. 2 weeks after my father's ultimatum, I was restocking supplies in the ambulance when dispatch crackled over the radio. Unit 47. Respond to cardiac emergency at 4829 North Scottsdale Road. 67-year-old male, chest pains, difficulty breathing, partner Jake Sullivan was, already starting the engine. That's the Phoenician Resort, he said, referring to one of Phoenix's most exclusive hotels. Probably some rich guy who ate too much steak. We'd worked together for 8 months, and Jake had developed a cynical edge that came from seeing too much human tragedy. He wasn't wrong about the wealthy clientele at the Phoenician, but something about the address nagged at me as we sped through the desert night. The resort's security team met us at the entrance, their golf carts leading our ambulance through manicured grounds toward the spa building. Even at midnight, the place radiated luxury, fountains illuminated by soft lighting, perfectly trimmed palm trees, the kind of understated elegance that screamed money. Guests collapsed in the fitness center, the security chief explained as we unloaded our equipment. Hotel doctor's with him now, but he requested emergency transport. The fitness center was state-of-the-art, all gleaming equipment and mirrored walls. In the corner, a man in his late 60s lay on a yoga mat, conscious but clearly in distress. Dr. Sarah Washington, the hotel's on-call physician, was taking his vitals. Presenting with classic angina symptoms, she briefed us quickly. Blood pressure elevated, pulse irregular. Started about 20 minutes ago during his workout. I knelt beside the patient and immediately recognized the signs. The gray pallor, the way he was holding his chest, the shallow breathing that indicated his heart wasn't getting enough oxygen. But when I looked at his face, my professional composure nearly cracked. It was Bill Harrison, one of my father's business associates. I'd met him dozens of times at company events, charity dinners, the kind of social gatherings where successful men gathered to discuss deals and compare achievements. He'd always been polite to me, but with that distant courtesy reserved for the children of colleagues, people who existed on the periphery of real importance. "Mr. Harrison, I'm Alex Martinez. I'm going to take care of you, all right?" His eyes focused on me with difficulty. Martinez, Richard's boy. "That's right. Just try to stay calm. We're going to get you to the hospital." What happened next was a textbook example of why paramedic training mattered. As we loaded Harrison onto the stretcher, his condition deteriorated rapidly. His blood pressure spiked, his breathing became more labored, and the portable EKG showed the irregular rhythm that indicated his heart was struggling. "VTAC," Jake called out, reading the monitor. "Ventricular tachycardia, a potentially fatal arrhythmia." I'd seen this before, but never with someone I knew personally. The clinical part of my brain took over, running through protocols while my hands moved with practiced precision. Establish for access, administer medication, prepare for possible cardioversion if his rhythm didn't stabilize. Lex Harrison gasped. As we reached the ambulance, "Tell your father. Tell him I said you're doing important work." It was such an unexpected comment that I almost missed the subtle change in his heart rhythm. But the monitor caught what my ears had heard. His heartbeat was becoming more erratic, more dangerous. "Mr. Harrison, I need you to stay with me."
What?
"Don't try to talk right now." The ride to Banner Desert Medical Center was the longest 12 minutes of my career. Harrison's condition fluctuated between stable and critical, requiring constant monitoring and adjustment of medications. At one point, his heart rate dropped so low that I had to prepare the external pacemaker. My hands steady despite the personal stakes. Jake handled the driving and radio communication while I managed patient care, but I could see him glancing in the rearview mirror with concern. This wasn't just another call anymore. This was someone connected to my family, and the weight of that responsibility was enormous. "How's he doing back there?" Jake called out as we approached the hospital. "Stable but critical. ETA is 2 minutes." Harrison's eyes found mine in the dim ambulance lighting. Despite his condition, he seemed determined to communicate something important. "Your father," he whispered, "doesn't understand what you do, but I do now." "This matters, Alex. What you're doing, it matters." The emergency department team was waiting for us, led by Dr. Patricia Reeves, a cardiologist I'd worked with on previous calls. The handoff was smooth and professional. Patient history, medications administered, vital signs, treatment timeline, everything documented and communicated with the precision that could mean the difference between life and death. As they wheeled Harrison into the cardiac unit, Dr. Reeves pulled me aside. "Good work out there, Alex. That medication timing probably saved his life. The arrhythmia could have gone either way, but you stabilized him perfectly. Later, as Jake and I cleaned and restocked the ambulance, my phone rang. It was my father. "Alex, I just heard about Bill Harrison," the hospital called me as his emergency contact for business matters. "He said you were the paramedic who treated him." "Yeah, Dad. He's stable now. The doctors think he'll make a full recovery." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When my father spoke again, his voice carried a tone I hadn't heard before, something that might have been respectful. "Called me from his hospital bed an hour ago. Do you know what he said?" I waited, not trusting myself to speak. "He said your professionalism and skills saved his life, that you handled a critical situation with expertise he'd never seen before. He wanted to make sure I knew that my son was the reason he's still alive. The validation I'd been craving for. Years was finally there, but it felt different than I'd imagined. It wasn't about proving my father wrong or making him proud. It was about the simple truth that what I did mattered, regardless of who recognized it. About that job offer, Alex, let me say something first. I've spent so much time thinking about what I wanted you to become that I never really looked at what you already are. Bill opened my eyes tonight. What you do, ... It's not just a job, it's a calling." The words I'd waited my entire adult life to hear, but now they came with a complex mix of emotions. Relief, certainly, but also a sad recognition of how much time we'd wasted in conflict. "I'm sorry, son. I'm sorry I couldn't see it before." I hung up the phone. Jake looked over at me with a knowing smile. "Good call tonight, partner. Not just the medical stuff, though. That was textbook perfect. But sometimes the job chooses us, you know? Sounds like your dad finally figured that out." The rest of our shift passed in a blur of routine calls. A minor fender bender, an elderly woman who'd fallen in her bathroom, a construction worker who'd twisted his ankle. Each situation required different skills, different approaches, but the same fundamental principle: being present when people needed help most. By dawn, I found myself back at Mel's diner, but this time the weight on my shoulders felt different. Linda was working the early shift, and she immediately noticed the change in my demeanor. "You look like a man who's figured something out," she said, pouring coffee without being asked. "Had an interesting night. Treated someone who knows my father. I made it clear to my dad that what I do actually matters." Linda sat down across from me, something she only did when the diner was quiet, and she sensed a customer needed to talk. "Well, that's nice validation, but you know what? You didn't need his approval to make what you do important. You've been saving lives for 2 years now. That's been true whether your father acknowledged it or not." She was right, of course. The value of my work hadn't changed overnight, only my father's perception of it. But having that external validation, especially from someone in his world, it shifted something fundamental in our relationship. "He's been calling me an ambulance driver for 2 years," I said. "Last night, for the first time, he called me a paramedic." "Words matter," Linda agreed, "but actions matter more. Every person you've helped, every life you've saved, that's your real resume. Your father's opinion doesn't change any of that." My phone buzzed with a text from Kyle. "Dad called the apartment looking for you." Sounded different somehow, less angry. I showed the message to Linda, who chuckled. Family dynamics are funny things. Sometimes it takes an outside perspective to make people see what's been right in front of them. The morning sun was streaming through the diner windows now, painting everything in golden light. Regular customers were filtering in: the construction crew from the Henderson project, Mrs. Chen, who came in every morning for oatmeal and black coffee, the group of retirees who treated their corner booth like a private club. These were the people I served, in a way. It's not directly, but they were the community I protected, the lives I was trained to save when emergencies struck. Phoenix wasn't just a city to me anymore. It was a network of people who deserved someone competent and caring when their worst moments arrived. "You know what the best part of your job is?" Linda asked as she refilled my cup. "You get to be the person who shows up when everything's falling apart. Not everyone can handle that responsibility." As I walked to my car, I called my father back. He answered on the first ring. "Alex, I was hoping you'd call. I've been thinking about our conversation last month, about the deadline I gave you." "Dad, About that, let me finish, son. I'm withdrawing the ultimatum. Bill Harrison wasn't the only person who called me last night. Dr. Washington from the Phoenician reached out too. She wanted me to know that your quick thinking and professional expertise were crucial in stabilizing Bill's condition. I stopped walking, keys halfway to my car door. She called you? She did. Said she'd worked with a lot of paramedics over the years, and your level of competence was exceptional. That the medications you administered and the timing of your interventions made the difference between a survivable cardiac event and something much worse. The validation felt surreal after years of criticism and disappointment. But more than that, it felt like recognition of something I'd always known but had begun to doubt, that my work required real skill, real knowledge, and real dedication. Or something else, my father continued. I've been thinking about what you said. About the people you help. I realized I've never actually seen you work, never understood what your job really involves. I'd like to change that if you're willing. What do you mean? Want to do a ride along with you, see what you do. I understand why it matters to you. Would that be possible? The request caught me completely off guard. My father, who'd spent years dismissing my career, wanted to experience it firsthand. I think that can be arranged. We have a civilian ride-along program. I'd have to check with my supervisor, but I don't think it would be a problem. Good. I want to understand, Alex. I want to see my son at work. The deadline my father had given me was still a week away, but I already knew my decision. More importantly, it seemed like he knew it too. I belonged exactly where I was, doing exactly what I was doing. The question was no longer whether I'd have his support. It was how we'd build a relationship based on mutual respect rather than disappointed expectations. Dad, I love you, but I'm staying with the paramedic service. This is what I'm meant to do, I know, son, and I'm proud of you for knowing that. I'm proud of you for a lot of things I should have acknowledged years ago. As I drove home through Phoenix's morning traffic, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace with my choices and hope for my relationship with my father. The city looked different somehow, not just as a place I lived and worked, but as a community I served and protected. For the first time in years, that question didn't feel like it would define my entire future. Instead, it felt like the beginning of understanding between two people who'd forgotten how to see each other clearly. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.